Welcome to Trusting After Trauma, Season 5, Finding Freedom After Narcissistic Abuse. I'm your host, Pi Venus Winslow. Our goal is to provide information and resources to educate and empower viewers to recover from childhood trauma and narcissistic abuse so they can reclaim their health, happiness, and personal power. Our speakers specialize in supporting others through their unique expertise and offer valuable insights, tools, and inspiration for viewers to find the courage and motivation to change their lives. I'm super excited to have Sarah Pacaro here with us today. Sarah has worked as a transformational healer for a number of years now, guiding people to personal freedom within, energetically, emotionally, and spiritually. Freedom from the stories that kept them imprisoned and trapped in their body, mind, and soul, to quickly experiencing complete freedom from their past. Stepping into embodying and embracing their divinely given freedoms, inherent values, and worth, regardless of what they've been through in the past. So, welcome, Sarah. I'm so excited you're here today.
It's a pleasure to be here. I am too. Thank you.
Yeah. So just reading your bio, I was like, yeah, stories from the past. So tell us a little bit about you and how you came to do the work that you do now.
Yeah, I think right as you said that, what came to mind is that we get wrapped up in the past. We get wrapped up in the stories from the past. And for me personally, it felt like it was that almost like you're a mummy and you're being suffocated and strangled, but the wraps around you feel invisible, like you physically and literally can't see them, but you can feel them energetically, emotionally, spiritually. It feels like there's a stronghold or chokehold on you, and you live your life not getting it and trying to figure out what to do to get it, to like break your arms free from it, because it's just so scary to live that way. The biggest realization that I had when I got to that point in my personal life, when I realized the partner that I was with, and didn't know about the term narcissistic abuse, hadn't heard about it, but was living that way. And I had a marriage that was with a covert narcissist, and now I understand all these terms and labels. That was for a decade. And then immediately after that, 3 weeks after that ended, jumped right into another relationship, which I call relationship hopping now, because we're so deathly afraid and terrified of being alone, because the beliefs that we have about ourselves say we won't make it, we won't survive, we literally won't be alive if we're not connected to someone else. And there's truth in that. And that's the trouble with the trauma, is there's a lot of truth in it, because we are programmed internally and hardwired for connection and to avoid rejection. And it felt like with the ending of one marriage, that it was a complete rejection of my identity, myself, who I am. I wasn't lovable, I wasn't good enough. And those stories from the past that all added up to believing that. And this internal battle, I didn't want to believe that. Nobody does. And we're not programmed to believe that, because it's false truths, right? False narratives. And so we jump right into another relationship. But I ended up in a relationship with a malignant narcissist, and more of like psychopath level, and ended up having a baby, a child with that person. And of course, naturally, as we all do, wanted to save it, wanted, the fairy tale life, just happy, family, supportive, loving, get marriage, all of the things, and was holding on to even the little thread of what we had of hope that that was possible or available with that person that I had just brought life into this world with, and realized that that was possible, but with a different outcome, with a different ending of the story, with a new chapter. And that was not staying with that person physically. And then the unraveling and untangling of that relationship, which does take a while and is a process in and of itself, but then really rebuilding the relationship with the identity that I had developed within myself, that was just invisible, unknown. I didn't know I had all these stories, I didn't know I had these beliefs. I was very aware of the feelings and the emotions and some of the thoughts that I was having. And I knew that they were a very, very, very dark, coming from a very dark place, and felt within me like they were mine. and didn't want them to be mine, but it was as if I owned them. Like the thoughts that, my daughter would be better off without me, like thoughts of, how can I leave this world and leave her in a better position because I'm not in a good position, and understanding that she deserves that. And then just through, tons of therapy and the work that I now do with people, and conscious and subconscious work combined, really getting into a different story, a different life, a different narrative. And I thank God that I did have her, because I could see her. And if it wasn't for her, I probably wouldn't be here. But it was understanding that she'd be left with that. And if I couldn't live with that, there's no way she could. And almost seeing into her future and what it would be like, and knowing no one deserves to live that way, the way that I was living, and then I would be a contributor of her experiencing even more pain than I currently was experiencing. And it was like, no, I've got to figure this out. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know how long it will take. I don't know what it will be like, but I'm willing to see, because I I didn't even have enough love or care or compassion or forgiveness for myself at that point, but I just knew I didn't want her to carry the same wounds.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was like, whatever it takes, however long it takes, that's my focus, my goal, my mission now is for her. And then it did, through that, help me. Obviously, I was doing the work, and then she benefited, and so now I get to share that with everyone else as well.
Yeah.
It took going from a dark place to realize there was connections to everything from my past, from my upbringing, from my childhood, all those stories. And I'm really getting to the subconscious belief that I had about myself because of those things that actually really had nothing to do with me. But they were, I was the sounding board that they were projected onto, that the landing, and I held and I carried them. And that's, a lot of people ask, well, how do you let go? How do you surrender? How do you release? And it's that belief that it's your fault, or that something's wrong with you, or that you did something to deserve it, and therefore you should carry it. And
Mm-hmm.
realizing that was never yours to carry in the first place. That
Yeah.
was your parents, your coaches, your teachers, your best friends, their parents, all that was the world. That was outside of you. And then it got within you. And now you're walking with it on a daily basis. And it's like, you don't have to live that way. You get to
Yeah.
walk in truth and freedom and lightness. And so it really is just this process of that. And it was amazing, but
Yeah.
challenging, very, very challenging at times as well.
Yeah. Well, and an inspiring story too. I mean, I love how you connected the importance of like doing your own, like having a really important reason why you wanted
Yeah,
to step into doing this work. And it's not easy work. If it was easy, we nobody would need us to help them along the way.
right.
But something that you said that really stood out to me that I want to kind of circle back around to was this story. And you said you didn't even know you had this story. And so
Mhm.
for me, this was a sticking point too, because I remember in the beginning, I thought when I heard that, I thought it for me, it was the way it landed for me was more like I'm making up a story, but I'm like, but no, it's true. This is true. This is what is happening in my life. So it was really hard for me to see it was a story. Can you talk a little
Mhm.
bit about that consciousness shift where we can just start to see like because with narcissistic abuse, as you know, reality can be very confusing. We kind of get to a
Yeah.
point where like we don't even know what's real. So can you talk
Right.
a little bit about the story and the reality and like making that shift?
Yeah. Well, what came to mind as you said that, and this is probably because I grew up reading, and a lot of people that I've worked with actually grew up creating, and the subconscious mind will do this. It will give us an escape. It will give us an out, like an out route, because it wants us to be safe. It wants us to feel like we have a place of protection, and obviously internal protection. External, obviously, we wouldn't survive without it as well. But we desire that internal protection. So I grew up loving reading, and reading kind of took me out of this real world and into this imaginary world and this creative world where you could read about the craziest, wildest things, and it was like truly that phrase, anything is possible, and we could experience it through a different lens. And oftentimes we couldn't contribute or revert that back to our own experience that anything is possible, because what's possible is like our limited perspective of reality. But if we're imagining that we're one character in a story and there's 20 characters, let's say, in a book, we can only ever experience it through our perception. So if we're learning about who we're interacting with, who we're engaging with, who we're connecting with, but then you turn the chapter, you go to the next chapter, and that next chapter is about a whole different set of characters, but we don't know them because we're not in that chapter, but maybe we're in the chapter following. And then further down into the story, all these characters kind of come together. But it's almost like narcissistic abuse is another character, and they're telling you about all these other things that are happening, and you're like, I don't get it. I don't see it. What do you mean? That doesn't make sense, because you are literally almost unaware of the other chapters or stories or characters and the decisions they're making, the actions they're taking. But then you get pulled into it because you're told about it. And oftentimes when you're pulled into it, you're told that this is your fault, this is because of you, this happened because of you, or you're wrong because of this. And you're like, I don't, I literally don't get it. What do you mean? And of course, because we're meaning making machines, we go on a quest almost to try and figure out what that means. And oftentimes we're very loving, caring, kind, compassionate people who would never, ever intentionally want to hurt anyone else. And when we're told that we're doing that, or we're a part of that, or it's because of us, we want to make it right. And we will go to the ends of the earth to try to make it right. And it's all made up. It's all lies. It's all a conjuring to protect their wrongs. And
Mm-hmm.
so it will never ever come full circle, but our desire is to make it come full circle. But it's almost like all these half circles that we end up trying to piece together and call it a full circle so that we feel complete and we feel ease. But
Mm-hmm.
we never get that. It always feels like we're taking broken pieces and trying to put them together and make something with it. And it's just crazy. Like you said,
Yeah.
it's craziness. That's exactly what it's like until you go on this journey with all these broken pieces going, I don't know what to do with any of this, and feeling like because you can't do anything with it, that you're part of it. You're part of the brokenness, or you're the reason for the brokenness. You're a reason for the failure. Like you've got what you need, but there's no glue to keep it all together. And even if you did, it would be like, well, it's not as pretty as that one that was never broken. And so you're this character feeling like crazy, lost, confused, because there's all these manipulative stories being told and half truths, and some of it feels real, and you have this feeling inside of you that you want it to feel completely different than the way it does, and you're trying and you're giving your best intent and best effort to try to experience that outcome for you and those that you love.
Mm-hmm.
And like no matter what you do, it's never getting you to that place or to that point.
Mm-hmm.
And so it really is just a complete mind game that you
Yeah.
experience. So it really is, it's almost like the healing and coming through it and getting to the triumph after the trauma is playing where everyone is playing by the same rules. And the narcissist will, as you know, always change the rules. It's like
Right.
sometimes playing with my daughter playing the game. And no, well, this is how you play. And it's like, well, no, these are the rules. Like, but then they're constantly making up their own rules because they're always trying to win the game. And if they don't, then they want to give up and throw the whole thing and not even play. And you're like, I thought we were having fun playing. Like, why? What just happened?
Right.
And so it
Right.
really is everyone contributing, but really having that reconnection with yourself where
Mhm.
you and yourself are reintegrated and you've become one, and you're not like 10 different versions of you trying to go out and please everybody. But sometimes that's a struggle in and of itself to recondition and reprogram where you feel safe and you no longer feel selfish. You no longer believe the things that were told about you or to you that make you feel bad or wrong. And so returning to yourself and reestablishing and repiecing together the pieces of your identity that have been felt like they're broken or shattered. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's a
Yeah.
fun journey, but it almost feels like a game or like a story or a book that's made up or pretend or doesn't matter, but it really does because it's the quality of your life.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I love that you're talking about like all of the fragmented pieces and trying to like put them like figure out like how they go together. I think a lot of times when people experience narcissistic abuse, they spend a lot of time and energy trying to make sense of the crazy
Yeah.
instead of
Yeah.
letting go of that
Hmm.
story or trying to make that story work, because like you
Yeah.
said, it's not it's not even real. It's not even a real
Or honoring, thank God it doesn't make sense to you. Because
story.
if it did, you would be like the one it makes sense to. And so, in a sense, you would be just like them. So, thanking God, like, I'm so glad this doesn't make sense to me. Because if it did, I would be them.
Exactly.
And
Wow.
I'm so grateful that I'm not.
That is such a that's such a relief and a refreshing way to look at it. Thank God. It doesn't make sense to me. So yeah. So for viewers who are watching, if you're wondering why it doesn't make sense, thank goodness. And you can let that go, right? So let's talk about how people, start stepping into their authentic story and getting out of that,
Yeah.
and letting that go.
Or at least, and maybe not even letting it go, because I think that generally comes later on. It comes through honoring and through accepting. But honoring, this is something to be joyful and grateful for, that this does not make sense to me. And maybe the letting go is that I no longer need to try to make it make sense. I'm going to fully accept and fully honor that it never will. And with that, you have the facts of what happened, and separating the emotion from what happened. Because we get wrapped up in this tornado of emotion of what happened because we put our heart into it. Theirs was never in it. And they it's almost like they took our heart out and we want to get it back. But the truth is they never did and they never could. But the amazing thing is that we still have emotions, and so it still shows that we have our heart. So I always say, like, write down your Bible of facts, like what actually happened, what's the truth of what happened, and only from your perspective. Because our mind is going to say, well, they said this and they did that. And they said when this happened, you did that. Like, what was it from your perspective? What are the facts that you know? And then maybe if you're, I don't know, people like to journal, like if they want to journal and then have a journal, like what was the emotion experienced or felt, and honoring that without making it wrong. Well, I felt like was I wanted to kill them. Like, oh, I'm a bad person who does that, especially if you're spiritual. It's like, thou shalt not kill. Like, not making yourself wrong for any of it, but separating and looking at the facts, because that really is your truth. It was your truth in that moment. But the truth is, there's an energetic, emotional connection to your identity to those stories, but really starting to separate them and seeing that those are the things that you experience. And it doesn't mean that anything is bad or wrong with you because of anything you've gone through. And later, as you continue this journey, those are actually the things that become your strength, because you begin to clearly see, clearly identify what was real for you. Because in the world of narcissistic abuse, they try to alter and skew and jade your truth and try to flip what was real for you.
Hmm.
And you kind of know it. I do believe we always know it, but then we question it. And
Yeah.
so you begin to separate the questions of it, or use the questions to empower you and to embrace you to continue through. A lot of times we get to a certain point and then it feels so hard and we just say, you know what, I just want to stop. I can't go any further. But that's not truth either. We can always go further, and every day is another opportunity to go a little bit further. But I think the perspective is we look at other people and we're like, well, they're there and I should be here by now. So I haven't gone far enough. I mean, life is always going to happen. It's never going to be perfect, but there's this perception that, okay, separation is actually a good thing. So separating from the story, separating the truth from the lies, and clearly identifying it, seeing it for what it is for us. And sometimes doing this work with ourselves first, so that other people's perspectives aren't brought in to kind of muddy up the waters. So to kind of, if it's like muddy water, letting it settle down, and then the mud is on the bottom and the water's on the top, and then working with someone who really gets this and understands it. um, I know in the beginning I tried to go to counseling and therapy with a narcissist, and just a waste of time. It's a joke. And a lot of times people who are uneducated or unexperienced in this type of abuse and manipulation and trauma end up siding with the abuser. And then you feel like you're smaller, you're less empowered, and they're more empowered because they use it against you later. Like, see, you are the crazy one. And then it feels more disempowering and you feel like more in that straitjacket that you're never going to break from. So I think
Yeah.
just separating, writing that down, because you're going to have those moments where you're thinking, well, it wasn't that bad. They didn't do this or that. And then you're going to compare it to someone else's story. But you always have your truth if you've clearly identified what it was for you. And then you can see patterns in your emotional state. When this happens, I experience this emotion. And instead of wondering, why do I feel this way? What's wrong with me? Seeing, oh, when this happens, I feel this way. And beginning to see your own patterns, because we all have them, but we can use them to empower us and embrace us and to get us through everything that we're going to go through in life, not just in the narcissistic relationship, but even after.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can see, following that thread of what you're talking about is when you can start separating the stories and the truth, then you can start trusting yourself again and believing in yourself, which is, like something that you really focus on helping people with, is starting to believe in themselves again.
And believing that their desires are available because we all have desires. Like mine were to have a family, to be in a loving marriage and happy relationship like forever, right? It's like the normal, like get married and live happily ever after. But seeing how your desires are still good desires and good intentions, but seeing how they used your desires against you. And then as you're writing the stories, or really getting clear on what it was that was used against you, but it couldn't break you. That's still a desire that I have and hold. And now it's available because there's a separation and a disconnection from the beliefs that I held about myself from going through those experiences. That it's okay to have that desire and it's not selfish. It actually empowers others to live and go through and move towards that for themselves, because we all deserve that. We all deserve to really be respected, loved, trusted, connected to people who have that relationship with themselves and believe that it's available for everyone else.
Yeah. Yeah. What is the number one thing that you love when people truly begin to believe in themselves?
Oh gosh, there's so many. There's so many. But I love when they really begin to believe that anything is available to me, because I really do believe in the goodness and the power of people. That, I mean, if you look at the evidence of the amazing, incredible, wonderful things that humans, when they've come together for the collective good, have done, have been able to accomplish and achieve. And when people really believe in their own power, because I believe we all have unique and divine gifts within us that are for the good. And when we really begin to believe in those, we begin to embrace and accept those and step into those instead of just thinking, oh, that's good for them or that's available for them, but not for me. Because when we adopt that mindset, we step out of the arena and we just become an observer of life. But when we really step into that, we become an active participant in that story and really begin to connect with other people who are actively engaged and participating in being a part of co-creating that and collaborating with that. The great minds think alike, right? So it's this connection with a great mind that says, I believe in me, I believe in you, we can do this, let's go. And it's almost this fire inside of you that's like nothing will stop us. There might be things and there will be things that will try to get in our way and prevent us, but they won't, and will prevail. We'll do this together. We're not in this alone. We never have been. We never will be. So let's go. So it really is stepping into their personal power and being with others who are on a journey to do the same.
Mhm.
Not others who have accomplished or have achieved and like they're done, but others who are along the journey with us and like going together to do this.
Yeah.
So I love when people start to believe that about themselves, believe that it's possible and believe that it's available, and say, whatever it takes, I, I'm on this journey, I'm on this mission, and
Hmm.
not really have a deadline. I think when we drop the deadline, then we can be in that kind of energy of like, this is a part of the journey to life. This is what I've came here for. This is what I'm excited to live for. Because sometimes when we put a deadline on it, or a by when date is what I call it, if it hasn't happened by a certain time, we go back. We get like a vacuum hoovered, right? That's a term in the narcissistic world. We get
Yeah.
hoovered back into that story, like a Hoover vacuum that has sucked us back of the story that I'm a failure because I had set this goal to accomplish by this time and it didn't happen. Like, drop all that, let all that go, and just simply be on the mission and on the journey with others who are as well, and believe in that power within them. It will come to pass, and our best days are ahead of us as long as we continue moving.
Hmm. Yeah, I love
Yeah.
that. That's really that's inspiring, and it's also a relief, which is what I'm experiencing when I'm hearing you say, "Oh, you didn't hit your goal." So it doesn't even mean that you failed. It just means renegotiate again,
Yeah.
like, set it a little bit further ahead and stay on the journey. Like it's okay
Yeah.
because it's your journey.
I see it. Yeah, it's like a post-it note. It's okay to have that date, but if it doesn't, it's okay. You get to move. It's like it's not written in permanent marker. It's written in pencil on a post-it note. You get to take it off and you get to move it. And you get, okay, what was it that I get to learn? What were the opportunities I experienced? What did I learn? Take those lessons and leave all the rest where it already is. It's already in the past, but extract and take the lessons with you as you continue, because now you've moved that little post-it note. Maybe it's 6 months down the road. And so, what did I learn from that? How can I grow from that? And how, when I do accomplish and achieve it, will I already be better for it because I've taken all these lessons with me? And with these, there's nothing that can stop me. Like, it's
Yeah.
almost just a continual reconnection with your personal power and with the strength of others along the way as well. So seeing everything really through the lens of it being an opportunity that empowers you
Hmm.
is I think just what excites me when that lights up inside of people. Like, this is okay. I'm here, I'm okay, I'm breathing, I'm alive. Let's keep going. And
Hmm.
this, okay, yes, what did we learn from that? Well, this is what I learned from that. And leave everything behind that has this negative, like, heaviness of, oh, and say, it's okay, we're still here, let's keep going. And when people kind of get excited and look forward to that because there's an internal switch that has shifted,
Hmm.
and yeah, it's like the fog has lifted and you can see things clearly now. Like, literally, like when you're driving, on the coast in the fog, and you're like, I can't see but 2 feet in front of me. And when the fog lifts, you can see 1,000 feet in front of you. You're still not to your destination. You're still driving and going that direction you need to go to, quote unquote, get there. You can see further ahead and see more clearly. And so with that, you feel more safe.
Hmm. Yeah, that's that's a powerful image. I like that image, even though you can't see that far ahead, you're moving in the right direction. And so for people who are really struggling with believing in themselves, what would you how do people get to that place of complete belief in themselves? How do they get to the place where they're starting to see the bigger picture?
Well, that's the most powerful part of the one-to-one private personal work that I do with people. Because as I'm looking at that vase behind you, it does almost like a vessel, a container that holds something. And right now it's holding negative image, negative belief, negative self-talk, really emotionally charged, energetically heavy stories, emotions of fear and shame and pain and blame. And so it is, if our physical bodies house our spiritual bodies, they are full. It literally feels like there's not room for anything else. So it begins with the removing and the clearing of anything that's not serving or benefiting you. And so it really does begin with removing those internal beliefs, because first we make our beliefs and then our beliefs make us. And then our beliefs, they dictate our actions, or sorry, our thoughts, and our thoughts direct our actions. And so it's a compounding effect of the things we're doing, saying, thinking, feeling, and believing, but at the tip and the core of it is the belief about ourselves. And so shedding those layers and levels of that. And that's when we get right to the belief and we don't just try to change it through conscious action of, I'm just not going to text that person. Well, wait until you experience a certain emotion, and then all of that, like, promise that you made to yourself, goes out the window. And then it's like, oh, I don't, I don't keep true to my word. And it's like, oh, that's because I don't deserve to be told the truth. It just, that's craziness. But when you get to the belief that built up in there, and you shift that from one that's self-deprecating and self-harming to one that's motivating and encouraging, and that says, yeah, you might do that action every now and then, but that doesn't change the truth about who you really are. And we would believe in the truth of who we really are. We can slip up and text the person, like, if you've been drinking a long night, whatever, and still get right back on track and not fall back into that trap.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a lot of times what happens is we just try to do it through sheer willpower or conscious effort. But we're trying to do that, and you're fighting against the strength of an internal unconscious belief. In the subconscious world, there's 95% subconscious, everything else is like a 5% conscious. That's our thoughts and our actions. And so getting to the core of what creates all that and transforming that from negative in an easy way, from negative to positive, or uplifting, inspiring, motivating, encouraging, from like, ugh, then it's almost like that vessel when we first start removing that stuff, and then it has space for that stuff to come in.
Mm-hmm.
Because right in the beginning, it just feels like everything is compact and compounded, and there's not room for anything else. So it can feel like I can't do another thing. I've already tried everything. And the truth is, you're doing it with that same belief. So shifting the belief, and then it clears and removes out a lot of that stuff out automatically. And then it really does create space for more new regenerative, restorative things. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Love that. It's so true. And it's so powerful. And you've shared so much with us today. It for people who are watching, like, let's just kind of bring it home right now. And I would I would I want to invite you to share the one main thing that you, with everything you shared today, the one main thing that you really want people to take away from this conversation today.
I think for me, and repeatedly, and this is what I've seen, and everyone I've worked with as well, is that because of those old stories that have us feel trapped in the past, there's a belief that I'm not enough. Like, all this work, all this effort. And that was the beginning of my journey, was like literally writing that on my mirror. I mean, there would be times where I would look into my eyes in the mirror and say that, but not even be able to get through that 3-word phrase. It was like, I am, and I could like feel it stuck in my throat. And I could hear so many other things. Or even if I could squeak out the word enough, it felt like a lie. It
Mm-hmm.
was followed by, yeah, right. But it is connected to a core belief. And so when that's shifted, it becomes easier. It never becomes perfect, but to really begin to reprogram that into our mind. And when we reprogram that into our mind, it begins to kick out the lies. And so when whatever we have on repeat is what we see, right? Those are the things that become like manifested, if you will. And so just telling ourselves and doing mirror work, even journaling it out, writing I am enough, and positive journaling. I think sometimes it's so easy to go into the negative, like hatred journaling. And that's fine if you do get it out. There needs to be a healthy way to get that out, but maybe ripping that out and burning it up and not leaving it in. You're almost like literally leaving it in the journal, like doing things, a process of removal, and adding in and creating space for I am enough, I am enough, I am enough. Because there are so many things that lead to that core belief that we're not. And we all are. We were born enough and we will die enough. We've always been enough. We always have been. We always will be. And so, really deeply integrating that into our lives, or even if we start to think about something that we know maybe shouldn't do, and asking ourselves, if I believed I were enough, what would I do? If I believed I were enough, what would I say? Or what would someone, because sometimes we can't see ourselves in that, what would someone who does believe that they're enough do or say in this situation? And we're probably going to experience that it's different from what we were thinking of doing or saying, but we're literally calling in that future version of us that we desire to be into the present by
Yeah.
taking steps and actions, and then through repetition of that, we become that. Because we become what we repeat, and we've unconsciously, unknowingly been repeating, I'm not enough, I'm not enough. And so just this reversal, a rewinding of that and getting back to the truth that we are. And so maybe there's so much power in questions. And if
Yeah.
we desire to be, live as if we are already. Even
Yeah.
though in the beginning it'll kind of feel like a lie, and that's okay. We can kind of laugh about it and go, "Oh, this isn't true," but I'm going to do it anyway because I want it to be true,
Mhm.
and not acting as if, but it's almost a belief in a shift in beliefs. So
Mhm.
shifting the belief instead of just acting as if, because then we're always going to feel like we're a fake or a fraud. But through the integration of it, it becomes who we are.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. So much goodness in this conversation today. And you have a free gift to offer our viewers. So could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it kind of goes in line with that. There's a lot to be said about that. In the beginning of my journey, I listened to a lot of audios and meditations, and again, sometimes those things can feel fake or feel like woo-woo-y in the beginning, but it really does start to remove some of this internal clutter that's been built up and add in the positive good things into that vessel. And so over time, you get that shifting where maybe it feels like it's 90% negative now, and so through the repetition of our mind, because our minds learn by repetition and continuation, continuing to listen to an audio that's empowering, uplifting, motivating, encouraging, and inspiring. And then, for me, I'm a reader. I love to read. And so there's a written, almost like sovereignty and prayer or meditation that you can read and just declare and decree and speak over your life. And then it becomes a part of your life. So there's a written version of it. They're different. So they're not the same thing. The audio and the written I guess statement that you can download and put on your mirror wherever you frequently see, maybe your refrigerator, and read it continuously. It become integrated, and it kind of kicks out those negative thoughts throughout your day, which are linked to your actions, your habits, your behaviors. So those are the two gifts, the audio and then that written thing you can print out and read as well.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for sharing. That's very generous of you. And I want to encourage everybody to click on the link and get the audio and the written version of those affirmations and get realigned so that
Yeah.
you're letting go of what doesn't
Yeah.
serve you and bringing in and embodying
Yeah.
what you do want to create, which is a belief in yourself
Yeah.
and a positive mindset and outlook and way of being for the future that you want and get to create for yourself.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So thank you so much, Sarah, for being here today. I really appreciate you.
Oh, you're very welcome. And I look forward to connecting with everyone who gets the pleasure of joining and being a part of this. Thank you again.
Thank you. And I want to thank everybody who is watching and joining us for Trusting After Trauma Season 5. We hope that you enjoy this journey with our experts on how we can find freedom from narcissistic abuse and heal our body, mind, and spirit to live joyful, authentic lives.